Good evening. I'm Laura Ingraham. This is the Ingraham Angle, ahead on a cannot miss hour. If you haven't been watching television tonight, you haven't been watching Hannity, you didn't know what was released about an hour ago, but Rudy Giuliani will be joining us shortly with breaking news, exclusive reaction about the release of a secret recording between then candidate Donald Trump and his attorney, Michael Cohen. Also, two simple questions. Why does John Brennan still have a security clearance, and should it be revoked? The answers are coming up later on in tonight's Angle and other conversations. You just don't want to miss this. This is like always happens right before the show. News breaks, and I love it. It's like radio. It's like crazy. Everything happens at the last minute. Fine by us. Plus, even outside the White House, he still has the president's ear. Who am I talking about? Great night to have him on. Former White House Chief of Staff, Reince Priebus. He'll join us for an exclusive, and he'll offer insights into the president's thinking on Russia, the communications, what's going on with the chief of staff, and this current controversy about this tape being released. And later, we'll dive into two explosive cases, one involving police and race in a caught-on-camera moment in Georgia. So we'll get into that and a lot more coming up here on the Ingraham Angle. And I got to tell you something. When we got Giuliani on the phone and we got our next slate of guests, you're going to want to buckle up. Tonight, some breaking news, as I referenced. CNN claims to have gotten their hands on recordings between then candidate Donald Trump and his then attorney, Michael Cohen. Now, the tapes were provided by Cohen's now current lawyer, Lanny Davis. Remember, he used to be out there, and Lanny's an old friend, but he was out there defending Bill Clinton not too long ago, and long known for his vituperative and steadfast defense of all things Clinton. Here's a little piece that CNN played, and it must be stressed that we at Fox News have not confirmed the authenticity of these tapes.
I need to open up a company for the transfer of all of that info regarding our friend David, so that I'm going to do that right away. I've actually come up and I've spoken to Alan Weisselberg about how to set the whole thing up with funding. Yes. And it's all the stuff, because you never know where that company, you never know where he's going to be. Correct. So I'm all over that. And I spoke to Alan about it when it comes time for the financing, which will be.
What financing?
We'll have to pay you. So no. I got no.
The tape is interestingly cut off right at that point. Joining us now for reaction is Alan Dershowitz, author of the book The Case Against Impeaching Trump, which is now a huge New York Times bestseller, along with Saul Weisenberg, former deputy independent counsel for the Whitewater investigation. Gentlemen, thank you both for being with us to tackle this news breaking just an hour ago. Professor Dershowitz, let's start with you. We're all lawyers, and there's something that sends a chill down my spine, up my spine, about hearing a conversation between an attorney and a client. I don't care what the government's threatening you with, what the prosecutors are threatening you with, but to hear a private conversation played between the two on national television, it's like I have no words. But I guess they waived the privilege, right, Alan? I mean, that was the decision that the Trump legal team made.
Yeah, I think you're going to have to ask Rudy. Rudy is a friend of mine, and he's a great lawyer, and he rarely makes mistakes. But you have to ask him why he waived the privilege about that conversation. The conversation is a natural one. I've had it with clients dozens of times. The client suggests something. If the tape is accurate and if what Lanny says is on it, the client suggests maybe cash, and the lawyer says no, and the client says fine, we'll do it by check. That's what lawyer-client conversations are supposed to be about, a back and forth where the client suggests something, the lawyer says something else, and the client generally listens to the lawyer. But the big picture is, A, there's nothing on the tape that suggests any kind of a crime. B, what is strongly suggested by the prior interview by Lanny Davis is that Cohen has made his decision. He's going to cooperate with the prosecutors. He's going to flip. He's going to try to get immunity, and he's going to testify against Donald Trump. Whether he has anything to say that's incriminating is a real question, and whether, even if he does, he's allowed to say it. Because remember, Giuliani didn't waive other privileges, just that tape. And even if he has something that might be incriminating, no evidence that he does, he can't reveal it. unless it's a violation of the lawyer-client privilege or waived if it's lawyer-client privilege material. So those, I think, are the big picture items.
So what is the potential jeopardy, if any, that this tape poses to the President of the United States? And again, so people understand this, it's hard to hear this tape. It's a little bit unintelligible. We're going to talk to Giuliani exclusively in just a few moments. But their impression is that what the president said is no cash. And Cohen says, no. And Trump then says, you can hear him say, a check. So he could be, again, maybe we can, make this tape clearer. But right now, it's unclear what he said. But could the president have been saying, then candidate saying, we want a paper trail here?
I don't know, but it doesn't matter what he's saying, Laura, in terms of your question. I agree completely with Professor Dershowitz. There's no indication of a crime here. Now, it may end up establishing that President Trump lied, which is certainly a serious matter. I understand that he said he didn't know anything about the payment by the parent company of National Enquirer, but that's very different as to whether or not there was a crime. I see nothing resembling that. I do think it's shocking, irrespective of whether it was wise or prudent to waive the privilege, really shocking for a lawyer to be taping a conversation with a client, whether it's privileged or not. It's certainly confidential client information. I'm not sure that Cohen has definitively made the decision to flip, and the only reason I say that is because by doing and taking the actions publicly that he is taking, it seems to me that he might be making a last-ditch effort for a pardon. I see no other reason for it, because if he wants to do a deal and to flip, typically the prosecutors don't want you going out and talking on national TV. So it's a bit of a mystery to me. Well,
and we keep hearing that from Michael Avenatti, who seems to have, divinely discovered that there are more than one or two tapes. You hear him on TV. It's like there are many tapes, and everyone will see. This is all horrible stuff about to come out. That's what you get from him. But Professor Dershowitz, there doesn't seem to be any transaction that actually took place here, correct? So whether the president misspoke or misrepresented things on Air Force One when he referenced not knowing about the transaction, there was no transaction here ultimately. Does that have any relevance?
That's right. So, yeah, there's no crime. This couldn't be an attempt or a conspiracy, because in the end he says pay by check. But the whole context of the conversation would seem to undercut the cash analysis. The context of the conversation is, let's create a legal form. Let's create a corporation. Let's not leave it up to one person. When you create a corporation, you create records. Corporations don't pay by cash. Corporations almost always pay by check or by wire and leave a paper trail. So if, in fact, the president did say, and it's very hard to hear, pay cash, that seems very much out of context of the conversation. The other thing is the tape ends very abruptly, which could suggest that there's more on the tape that's exculpatory, but that Cohen either has kept that as leverage or maybe erased it because maybe he doesn't look so good on it. But ending the tape abruptly the way this one ends is suspicious. And when you get forensic experts coming in, they can tell you whether it was cut off, whether the phone stopped, whether I think this was an in-person conversation, but we're not positive. But it could tell you a lot more. I think this tape has to be subjected to forensic analysis. Look, I had a case just like this 40 years ago, where the issue is whether the policeman said it's done on wiretaps or it's not on wiretaps, and eventually the forensics proved that we were right and we won the case.
Yeah, I think all of us back in the makeup room were listening to this like 15 times, and none of us could figure out what was said. Okay, I want you both to stay right there, because joining us now on the phone is Rudy Giuliani, personal attorney for President Trump, speaking with us exclusively after the release of this recording. Mayor Giuliani, thank you so much for checking in with us tonight. First of all, your reaction to this tape's release.
Well, I think it's, first of all, the major point is it's outrageous that someone would tape his client surreptitiously. And number two, it's also foolhardy for them to try to kind of yell and scream and make believe what's on the tape. I agree with you that tape is a little bit hard to hear, but I assure you that we listened to it numerous times. And the transcript makes it quite clear at the end that President Trump says, quote, "Don't pay with cash." Cohen then interrupts and says, "No, no, no, I got it." And then you hear distinctly, "If you're careful and you slow it down, check." And then Cohen follows with "No, no, no," and then quickly cuts off the tape, which indicates exactly what President Dershowitz was saying, that Cohen doesn't want the rest recorded because it was too exculpatory from the point of view of the president.
Rudy,
Also,
go ahead.
There's no way the president is going to be talking about setting up a corporation and then using cash, unless you're a complete idiot, and the president's not an idiot.
Rudy, there's a moment tonight on CNN where Lonnie Davis, he kept saying, well, we're showing you that what Giuliani claimed, that Michael Cohen was the one who brought up the issue of cash, not his client, Donald Trump. We're showing you with this tape that it was Trump who brought it up. So he seemed to say that the release of the tape, Rudy, was because of you and what you said.
Well, the fact is that the president does bring up cash, but he says, "Don't pay with cash." Right? And then Cohen says, "No, no, no." And the president says, "Check." And then Cohen says, "I got it." The point is the president wants the transaction to be memorialized.
Rudy, there's some concern about the decision to waive privilege in this case. A lot of legal commentators, we just talked to Dershowitz and Saul Weisenberg.
That's all well and good. That's all well and good for them to say that, but the reality is that the tape was leaked. Not by us. Nobody believes that. Last week we were treated to how we leaked it, which Jay and I were laughing about, Jay Sekulow. This was leaked on us with a very, very scurrilous description of what was on this tape, probably by the same people who were lying on CNN. And we had to correct the record. So we have no problem making this limited release because it is corroborative of the president's statement.
Now, are you still maintaining then tonight that the recording that was released this evening is 100% exculpatory toward the president and his previous statements about this?
I think your two guests just said that. There's no indication of any crime being committed on this tape, and that is absolutely right. So that's why we...
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, you know what the left is going to say. You know what they do. They've been doing it for months. That the president gave the impression that he didn't know about any of these transactions. That this might have been happening, but he didn't know about them. Comment on Air Force One. Saul referenced this in the previous statement. He said, "I didn't know," but it sounds like he knew that something was being set up to perhaps buy the rights to this McDougal story. Correct?
No. In fact, if you go back a little further on the transcript, I don't know if you have the whole thing. Cohen says that we need financing, and the president says, "Wait a second, what?
For
financing?" What? Then he has to explain it. The president did not know about this before this conversation, at least with regard to the transaction that we're talking about. I mean, he may or may not have known about McDougal's claims. I don't know that, but he didn't know about this transaction. This is the conversation in which they talk about how they're going to buy the rights.
And the rights, people have to understand who are watching tonight, the rights to this story from the National Enquirer, the company that owns the National Enquirer, were never purchased. So that transaction did not go through.
That's another thing that's absurd about this. What it makes clear is this is, at most, an attempt to do something. I don't know of any attempt in this category of crime that they're looking at. So in any event, I don't think anyone can suggest that this represents anything where the president did anything wrong. And that's the reason why we waived it. Would we have put it out had it not been leaked? No, we would not have put it out had it not been leaked. But it was being leaked to the New York Times under very, very false statements being made about it, which even are worse than the ones you're hearing now.
Were you given a heads up, Rudy, that this was coming out tonight at all, or was this a surprise to you?
Yes, we found out at 6 o'clock this afternoon. And look, we've been over the tape over the weekend about 5 times. What I urge people to do is just go online, listen to your broadcast. You played the tape, play it 3 times. The 3rd time you play it, it'll become clear. I've done tapes even longer than Alan Dershowitz. How about 4,000 hours of mafia people on tapes? I know how to listen to them. I know how to transcribe them. This tape is crystal clear when you listen to it. I've dealt with much worse tapes than this.
Are you concerned that there are other recordings out there between Cohen and the president? As a lawyer, as someone who's dealt with people who've been in a lot of trouble before, just like you have, Rudy, the idea of a lawyer taping a client it takes your breath away. But you know, are there other tapes that you're aware of?
Well, today,
will you seek to release them yourself?
Today, someone was leaking from, I'm sure their side, it can't be ours, that there were 12 tapes of Cohen with the president. May have been Avenatti, somebody else. Don't quote me on that. He's leaked things like there are a lot more tapes with the president. And Dershowitz yesterday asked him how, because it would be illegal for him to have that information and unethical. But in any event, there are no other tapes with the president. We have all the tapes in our possession. We have transcripts of all of them. We're comfortable with them, and there are no others.
Now, Rudy, you've known Lanny Davis a long time, and look, I've known him going back 20 years during the Clinton saga. Do you have any thoughts about his decision to represent Michael Cohen, given his long ties to the Clintons?
No, not at all. I don't have any concerns about that. He's a lawyer. He has a right to represent who he wants, and Michael has a right. I question the strategy of doing this, of trying to make a tape say what it doesn't say, or of putting out a tape in which you're kind of proud of the fact that you're a lawyer taping your client, and then thinking you could cooperate with the government. You know, to cooperate with the government, you got to have credibility. First thing that happens is this guy's going to be disbarred. I mean, it's ridiculous. He's a pariah to the legal profession.
There was a moment tonight on CNN, I'm going to play it for you, Rudy, where Chris Cuomo actually asks about this recording and whether it might taint the entire substance of it. Let's watch. Listen.
This recording could be argued to be fruit of the poisonous tree, that as counsel, Michael Cohen shouldn't have been recording his counsel, his client, then Donald J. Trump, now President Trump. How do you get past that this whole thing can't look good for Cohen because he should have never done it?
Well, I'm not going to shift the topic. It's up to Mr. Cohen to explain why he was taping.
So he didn't want to go into that.
This is great. When have I ever said it's up to the president to explain? That's his lawyer on being interviewed by Cuomo, and he throws the ball to his client. I mean, this is crazy representation. Have you ever heard of anything like this? You put out a tape of your client. You then make believe it says something it doesn't say. Believe me, there were 3 other versions of this before we got to this one that were even worse. And the transcript belies it. If you analyze it, have the patience to analyze it, and don't become frenetic about it. And now he's saying, well, give the ball to my client.
So I don't mean to harp on the Clinton, connection here, but it is interesting that Cohen chooses the longtime confidant, booster, defender of the Clintons after everything that happened during the campaign to represent him here. I mean, was he? I mean, you know how this deal goes, Rudy. Was Cohen trying to send some kind of message to the president? Look out, here we come, and you better watch out. I mean, it's an odd choice of lawyer, in my view. It's an odd choice.
Well, I don't know. I can't comment on that, Laura. I don't know any. Someone will say I'm interfering with right to counsel if I do that, and I don't want to do that. And I just question the whole tactic and Lanny's comment tonight, shifting the thing to Cohen instead of throwing him on the bus.
And Rudy, finally here,
you got to be able to answer. You got to be able to answer via client or not answer at all.
And finally, Rudy, on the issue of talking to Mueller, special counsel here, the reports came out that you all will talk about collusion and nothing else. Are there any developments on that you can tell us tonight?
No, I think we've been distracted the last couple of days, and they've been distracted with they're getting ready for the Manafort case. So we'll probably get an answer in hopefully the next couple of days, a week.
All right, Rudy Giuliani, we really appreciate you joining us tonight exclusively. Thank you so much. All right, and let's bring back in Saul Weisenberg and, of course, Alan Dershowitz to react to what we just heard from Mayor Giuliani. Saul, let's start with you. Anything jump out at you that the mayor just said?
Well, what jumps out at me in one way is what's not being said. And of course, I haven't heard the whole tape, as the mayor points out. But in all this conversation about did he say cash or didn't he say cash, my question is, why is he even discussing buying the former Playmates story if it's not true, which he has said it isn't true? Why would you care? Why would you want to buy it? Why would you be talking about that? I mean, I think let's look at the big picture. Professor's right. It's not a crime here, but I think that's something that is an elephant in the room that needs to be mentioned.
Well, I'd say, Saul, businesses settle things in different ways all the time because well-known people are targeted and sued because people know you'll settle. And, you know, it goes right to the settlement. But they probably just wanted it. I mean, I don't know, I'm just guessing. And Professor Dershowitz, you deal with this all the time. People want to get stuff off their plate. So, like, look, if we can put this away, let's put it away. How do we do that? Come up with different strategies. That's what I'm guessing if I were representing a client on this matter. Is that seem particularly odd to you?
No, it sounds very plausible, especially since they did seem to use the word plural, that perhaps what the president and Cohen were discussing is in the run-up to the election, there were probably going to be lots of people who will come and demand cash in order not to embarrass the president just before the election. And they were discussing how to set up a corporation to make payments if necessary to keep it from influencing the election. That happens all the time. And I don't think you can infer guilt from payment of money. Look, I think the tape is ambiguous. I think Rudy Giuliani did a good job on your show in explaining it. I think we have a better sense now hearing Lanny Davis on CNN and hearing Rudy Giuliani on this show. And I think there are a few conclusions that we can reach. Number one, there's no crime. I think everybody now acknowledges this doesn't provide evidence of a crime. Number two, it does show that Cohen and Trump are no longer joined at the hip, and Cohen would no longer take a bullet for the president. He may, in fact, fire a bullet at him. We don't know that. And number three, we have two extraordinary lawyers, Lanny Davis and Rudy Giuliani, both on different sides of a contentious issue, as distinguished from Avenatti, who has, no experience and no background in any of these issues. These are two guys who have litigated these cases for years and years and years. They're worthy adversaries, and this is a very, very exciting confrontation with high stakes.
Yeah,
so,
if
stay
you're a
tuned.
lawyer,
this is an unfolding drama.
Yeah, I mean, Saul, if you're a lawyer, you want to be you want to represent one of these clients. I mean, you're on television. Lanny loves to be on TV. I used to be on TV with him at another network years ago. We would debate all the time during the impeachment when you were working for Star, Saul. So you can't blame him for wanting to do the case. Of course, he wants to do the case. But my question is, what's the there? I mean, is a campaign finance violation or a conspiracy to thwart campaign finance laws? I mean, I heard that theory floated on another network tonight. And I'm thinking, okay, how are you getting from A to B to C in that analysis? And maybe you two are a lot smarter than I am, but I can't get there. Saul.
I don't see, based on everything I've seen so far, I don't see a campaign finance violation. But even if there was, as I said months ago, on your show, I think it's pretty small potatoes in the grand scheme of things. No president's going to be impeached for a relatively minor campaign finance violation. At most, it's very embarrassing. This is the least of the president's troubles, I think. I thought it was very striking that Mr. Giuliani did not deny the report that you talked about, that basically the president is not going to be talking to Mr. Mueller at all about obstruction of justice. If he talks to him at all, it'll be about collusion, which I think as a lawyer is a very, very good position to take.
Yeah, President Dershowitz, before we let you go, I'm glad we got that question into Rudy, because that report has been floating around. He's like, well, they're focused on Manafort now, haven't gotten back to him. But I get the sense that, what does Mueller do at that point? Then it's a game of chicken, right? Are you going to try to subpoena me? Are we going to fight the constitutionality of that? Where do we go?
Mueller would be very, very wise to accept this offer. Why? He's not going to be able to question the president about obstruction of justice. The president will claim presidential authority to have fired Comey, and he'll win on that issue. And so really, if he's getting an opportunity to sit down with the president and discuss and ask him questions about Russia and alleged collusion, he's probably getting all he would ever get after litigation. So my prediction here is that if Mueller is smart, and I think he is, he will accept this offer and have an opportunity to put hard questions to him, and perhaps expect to spring a couple of perjury traps on him, which is why if I were Giuliani, I'd be a little wary about having the president sit down unless the questions were scripted and the answers could be scripted in advance and the president wouldn't go off script. All of those are unlikely events, knowing this president and knowing this situation.
All right, we're going to have you both back.
I couldn't agree more.
We're going to have you both back later after the extensive voice analysis. They'll bring in the experts to analyze the tape. What was it? You know that's going to happen. They'll be all over the place tomorrow. But what a great night to have you both on. We really, really appreciate it. So thanks so much for spending so much time with us. And coming up, former White House Chief of Staff Reince Priebus will be here, another great guest for a breaking news night. Of course, former White House Chief of Staff. He's going to discuss White House communications, the midterms, and this breaking news tonight. Stay there.
How often do you feel the urge to go to the bathroom?
The media, politicians, the intel community. But nobody knows what the president's thinking more than his closest aides, even some who are no longer inhabiting the White House. And that includes an old friend, former White House Chief of Staff Reince Priebus, who was the first person the president called after the Helsinki summit. Call me. Joining us now, Reince Priebus. Great to have you on tonight. How are you, man?
Great to see you, too.
Stranger.
I was out for a couple of weeks with the family.
Yeah, nice.
Enjoying something I haven't been able to do for many, many years.
Yeah,
it's called a vacation.
A little rest.
Right.
Well, you don't get any rest. No rest for the weary tonight.
No,
Reaction.
What a night I picked to
come
I know.
So Reince is like trying to get out the back door. But come back. Right. So what's your reaction? You heard the segment with Rudy and Saul and Dershowitz.
Yeah. Well, I haven't heard the tape, but what I have done is I looked at the story from CNN on their own website. And even in their own story, they're sort of equivocating back and forth as to what the president said or didn't say, and it's not really clear what he said or didn't say. Look, you know, I think Saul at the end on your last segment had it sort of right. At the very worst, it might be embarrassing, but it's not illegal. One thing I have learned from being out of the sort of spotlight and the daily grind is that when you go back to Wisconsin and Michigan and Ohio, it's not just a talking point, it is just the absolute truth. I have not found a single person who is swayed by any of these stories, which is a massive financial boon to, you know, no offense, but the cable news, right. and especially a couple other networks. So it's not moving America. The president was at 37% on election day when he won. He's at, if you believe the worst poll, at 45 today. And so what people really focus in on is where's the economy, and isn't it great that we're at projected potentially 4% growth of GDP under Donald Trump.
Yep.
That's really what matters.
How many well-known people do you know who have dealt with people who make allegations, sue them? I don't know. Who knows what happened? I don't know what happened. But I do know when you're well-known, you're a target. You know, and you were a target in other ways, but you're a target. And a lot of people are like, I don't want to deal with this, or maybe I made a mistake. And get this off the table.
Well, just because someone settles a case doesn't mean they're guilty.
Well, it happens all the time. Corporate America, cost of doing business.
Well, now as you're a lawyer, I've been a lawyer for 20 years. I was a litigator for most of that time. I've settled a lot of cases where clients said, you know, this is BS. I can't believe we're settling it. And you'd say, okay, well, that's great, but you know, we can also, or we can spend a couple $100,000 in legal fees.
See, I litigate everything. I'm a litigator. I'm like, you sue me, I'm coming after you. I'll spend all the money I ask you to sue you back. So don't think about it. But yeah, but most people don't do that.
That's right.
They're not going to deal with that. So when you were with the president, things like this came up all the time. How does he handle it? What is his reaction? You were there when this kind of stuff came up, bubbled up. It was the last days of the campaign. People were freaking out. A lot of people were thinking he's dropped out of the race, and this Billy Bush thing happened. Now, you know, this came out days before the election. How is he dealing with it?
Well, look, I was one of the people that would freak out over every one of these kinds of stories. And over time, what I figured out with the president is that nothing sticks to him. None of this sticks. And what I found about his character is that he is a person who's able, which I am not one of these kinds of people, that can handle 50 total, you know, massive bullets coming at you and arrows and whatever you want to term it at one time, remain the same kind of person on a pretty much daily basis, in spite of the fact that maybe today 10 arrows are coming at you. Yeah. Next week it might be 50. The next week might be a pleasant week where only 2 or 3.
Things have to calm down, though, don't you think? I mean,
I think it'd be better for him. Here's what I think about the president. I think that if you look at the fundamentals of what he's accomplished, we won't go through them all, but we talk about him every day. It's unbelievable. If somehow or another some of these other issues could just go away by 50%, you'd be talking about the president on the $10 bill. And so I do also believe that there is a huge benefit to the president of putting some of these things to bed.
You don't have to fight everyone at once. You don't have to swing at every pitch. I've said this before. There's a lot coming at you. Don't have to swing at every adversary.
And he would be at 65% plus approval rating, my belief. But I also know that the president has, in spite of all of those types of advice that I've given, he's also defied it all. He was the guy that went down the escalator in June of 2015 and thought he was going to be president of the United States.
You all experts on TV. Right. He's probably watching. We're wrong, and I get it, but I don't think everyone's always wrong. But I get the point. He's done well. But Republicans are 7 points down among independents. Right. The Republican pool itself has shrunk a bit. His numbers have ticked up, which is fantastic. But you need those independents. You need those suburban. And they want things to calm down. Do they not?
In moderate House districts, that is true.
So what do you do? If you're advising the president, he calls you, what do you say? Mr. President?
Look, well, for one thing, I would not have advised him to say that he misspoke in Helsinki. I would have probably advised him to do what I think, I'm just guessing, what's in his head, which is, look, people, I'm trying to get along with somebody here, and you might not agree with every single approach I'm taking, but I'm doing my best to get along with a person that it has been difficult for us to get along with, and I'm trying a different angle here, and that's what I'm doing. And just be straight about it and move forward, not to claim
they were all in the situation room. Because I think the rest of it was Armageddon if he wanted to have a better relationship.
Because the rest of the country, outside of here and outside of New York, isn't really paying attention that much.
No.
And so to compromise, I think, what you actually believed in order to get.
So you're saying he didn't misspeak?
I don't know if he did or not. I don't think he did. I think he generally wants to get along with a person, and he has a demeanor of, hey, we're going to get along. We're going to be friends through this. We're going to talk about things. And
so did Bush. So did Clinton. So did Reagan.
I'm going to give you a sort of air of dignity here for a while, and we're going to see where this goes. That's where I think the president's at.
What frustrates him most right now?
I think probably what frustrates him the most is that he has an economy that's booming. People are back to work. Black unemployment is under 6%. He's doing all the things he promised to do. And he's competing with a 24/7 media cycle that really doesn't profit on sort of,
good news.
Not even just good news, but just sort of just fairness. And, there's two sides of a story. We have 24/7 cable, and there's no money in, there's only money in division. There's money. There is no money in sort of.
But that's the way it is. I mean, he knows that. That's the way it is, and he thrives off it. But
unity is a loser. Division is profit.
But he's great when he goes to the people, and not just rallies, but the factory.
Like today,
the factory floors, the VFW.
I think the things
that humanizes him. Yes.
I loved I would always advise the president to go to every single, go to the VFW, the American Legion, the veterans with disabilities, all those things, because you're right, it humanizes him, and whatever can humanize him makes him stronger in middle America.
People don't know, and he's actually very charming, and he's really funny, and he can be, and you don't see that a lot.
Yeah, and that's all very true, and I think the more that comes out, the better. You said 45% by the worst poll.
Yeah.
I think the Democrats are handling themselves. If they would find a way to be moderate, but they can't, so they're running.
Republicans going to hit him on trade.
Bernie Sanders and the gal from Brooklyn.
They're going to keep hitting him on trade and tariffs.
Well, I mean, I believe that Sonny Perdue's a pretty smart guy. So if he thinks that these subsidies need to help the farmers, I agree with him. But I also think that if you're handing out $12 billion in subsidies, it's probably saying something about the policy. So I think he needs to be careful.
Right.
All right.
Good to see you.
bet.
Thanks for coming
Thank you.
in. Another slow news night for Ryan.
Yes.
Stay with us. The debate continues over the release of that secret Trump-Cohen recording. Back in a moment.
At Bear.
The release of the secret Trump-Cohen tape tonight. For further analysis, let's bring in Chris Hahn, a political commentator, Democratic Party activist, and with me in the studio, Matt Schlapp, the chairman of the American Conservative Union. Matt, you've heard the tape, you've heard the commentary. Lanny Davis was on CNN he was just absolutely triumphant, saying, look, don't listen to me. Listen to the tape. Let your own ears be the judge. He said it about 15 times. And he's like, listen closely, Donald Trump saying cash. Now, I didn't hear it that way. Maybe some expert analysis will show something different. Even if it is true, it doesn't mean from Dershowitz and Saul Weisenberg. No criminal implication, but this is a pretty blockbuster night.
I listened to the tape. I hear his assistant come in. He's on a phone call.
Can I have a Diet Coke, please?
He needs some ice. Then he's talking to Cohen, so it's a little it's kind of like not clear. But I would just say it seems like we're in the same spot we always were, which Donald Trump lived a very extravagant life in many ways, and everybody knew it because it was on the tabloid press in New York every night of the week. So the idea that this is a replay to a more detail about that life, I don't know how that's instructive on what's going on in the country today. I think in most voters, I think they come to the same conclusion.
Chris Hahn, your reaction from the news tonight?
I think it's kind of like, remember when they had that sound effect? Did you hear Laurel or the other thing? I always heard Laurel. I think if you believe that Donald Trump is not telling the truth, you heard what you wanted to hear. Right? So, look, what I heard was the president acknowledging on tape that he did something that he has said many times before he didn't do. So I don't know if that's a crime or anything like that, but I do know that it shows that he lied. And there was a time in this country when a president lied about a sex scandal. It was a big story, and clearly a big story tonight. And I think it'll be a big story for a couple of days.
So
I think his Quinnipiac poll today is a bigger story. There was a significant drop there, and we'll see what happens.
Well, Chris Cuomo actually raised this issue that Chris mentioned just now. Let's watch.
They say that the president said, do not pay with cash, check, and that he was advising Cohen to do it all on the up and up because the president wanted to make sure that this was papered properly.
All right, we don't hear Lanny's reaction, but he basically laughed and went on to refute it. CNN's own website says it's unclear what is being said in the tape. Matt.
I agree with Rudy. Listen to it. Your viewers can make up their own mind. But I also, let's be clear about what this is. He's buying the rights to a story that makes allegations. It's a salacious story, and I don't think it is very uncommon for people who are prominent people to want to not have a bunch of negative things written about them, and they buy stories. Now, are all the parts of the story true? I don't know. But what the tape shows, potentially, is that they wanted this story not to run. That's what we're talking about.
His comment on Air Force One was something like he didn't have any knowledge of the transaction, or we don't have the actual. Yeah, that was about Stormy Daniels. It wasn't about McDougal, right? So that was it's a different transaction.
He denied knowing anything about McDougal as well. So here we are with him knowing something about McDougal. So I don't think we can believe anything he says about McDougal or Stormy Daniels or any of these other things that might pop up that are like this, because he has been proven a couple of times now to not being truthful with the American people. If I was advising him, I would say, put it all out there, all the dirty laundry on anybody who might have something like this.
Oh, really? Did you say that about Hillary?
Tell everybody about it.
Wait a second, Chris. Let me, hold on.
His voters won't care.
Get out the dirty laundry. Have you ever said that about Hillary? Have you ever said that about the Clintons? Get the dirty laundry. You'd have so much dirty laundry, there are not enough laundromats in Washington to clean it. I mean, come on.
I advise.
What politician does that?
I advise everybody who's in any kind of scandal like this to just put it out there and let it all be out there, and then deal with it all at once. The drip, 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 drip. gets to you eventually, and it will eventually get. I don't think it's gotten to the president yet, but it will eventually get to him. It always does.
I think this is all baked in a cake before the election. This McDougal story dropped in the Wall Street Journal. He wins Ohio, Florida. I think nobody cares about this. That's my view.
The problem when you're a 69-year-old billionaire, when you're a 69-year-old billionaire who's lived his life in the public, there are so many drips to all of that life that I think that's actually a mistake. I think what he should say is, I'm trying to fix the economy, kill ISIS, and you knew what I was when you picked me, and you wanted a fighter, and I'm fighting like hell for you every day.
Interesting conversation.
Yeah,
Chris,
I don't think you would have been so forgiving if it was a Democrat.
Well, Chris, I think you make some good points, and Matt, you make better points. No, I'm just kidding. You're both great to have you on.
Hey.